And okay, so thanks for joining us. What we're going to be looking at today is open badges. And I'll start off by going through the concept. So apologies if you know a bit about this already, but I'm not going to sort of expect any real understanding of the concept or awareness of the concept so far. So we'll have a look at that, and then I will also go on to a bit about design and looking at what to bear in mind for open badge system design, content design, and brand design. And finally, take a look at some of the tools that are available to you to get started with issuing and creating open badges. So just to set some context, first of all, what are some of the challenges that students face? If we're looking at this from the context of further and higher education, we know that students are faced with challenges for being motivated to keep going with their studies, and this also has an impact clearly on institutions because it impacts the recruitment and retainment of students. We know that some students struggle with the concept of having a long period of study before they receive any kind of recognition for the skills that they are achieving, and particularly students that may not have engaged well previously with formal education, or returners returning to education having been in the workplace for a long time, that there is a challenge there in terms of that sort of motivation to keep going and feeling that they are really learning something and doing something worthwhile with their studies. Another key challenge is standing out from the crowd. How do we improve employability prospects for students? If two students come out with the same degree, how does an employer differentiate between those students, or that student that may be particularly relevant and have that right mix of attributes as well as skills for the job that they're looking to fill? And we know that the online environment is increasingly being used for learning, communication and work, and that also employers are looking for potential employees more and more online. So things are becoming more digital in the ways in which we work, communicate, and also socialise. So with this, against this backdrop, Mozilla have been developing a digital accreditation infrastructure called Open Badges. And the Open Badges infrastructure is, hi there, Karen. We've not long got started. Welcome to the session. The Open Badges infrastructure enables anyone to earn, issue, and display digital accreditation called Open Badges. So the Mozilla aren't the way that Mozilla works. They develop open source products, like you'll probably know the Firefox browser, for example. So this essentially is a standard which anyone can use to create the platforms for issuing, create the platforms for displaying these open badges, and enabling earners to have control of these digital rewards or digital accreditation. And the overarching concept is called Open Badges. So perhaps to break this down, perhaps the most obvious part of open badges are the digital credentials themselves. And these really aren't much different from information-infused images that have been around for many, many years. If you think of coats of arms or kite marks, these are open badges are essentially digital information-infused images. And they contain additional information behind them, which you can see on this slide here. The standard defines certain metadata that any digital open badge contains. So user would would see an open badge on a website, they would click on it, and by clicking on it they will be taken to further information, which includes the badge name, a description of the badge, who the badge has been issued to. It will also contain a link to criteria, so what the person has had to do to gain this digital credential. It will contain information on who the issuer is and a link back to the issuer. It can contain a link to evidence such as a video or a blog post, a paper. It can contain other information as well, like the date it was issued, standards that might have been aligned to. Tags is an area that is also being developed for open badges. So the user sees this badge on someone's blog, for example, or someone's professional profile. They click on it, and this is the kind of information they get. So they're getting an awful lot of information about who received the badge, why they received it, and who issued it, what they had to do, what the person had to do to earn this credential. So other aspects then of the open badge infrastructure are the assessments and the open infrastructure. So they're far more than just a little image that sits on a web page. Behind the badge is all the information as to what someone has had to do to earn the badge, and potentially links to evidence that will show the learning or the competencies that have been achieved. And the open infrastructure means that these badges, instead of being contained within closed systems, there are systems and have been for a while that issue digital badges, but the difference between those kind of digital badges and an open badge is that an open badge isn't locked into any particular system. The infrastructure enables the earner to control their badges. They store those in something called a badge pack, which is essentially their own user-controlled portfolio, if you like, of badges. And they can choose where they display those badges. They can put those badges into collections, and they can choose to show certain collections of badges on certain sites and others on different sites. And from the issuer's perspective, when they issue the badge, then the badge is issued to the earner. The earner accepts it or not, as they may choose, and thereafter the control of what happens to that badge is very much in the earner's hands. So here is an example of just a screenshot of some badges that I have in my badge pack that have been issued by Mozilla. I've also got badges that have been issued by the RSC here in Scotland. And I display my badges on my LinkedIn profile, for example, and I also display them on my blog. And I have different groupings of badges as well. So I have professional badges and badges which I just have done for fun. So I suppose more my hobby badges. And the ones that I choose to display on my LinkedIn profile are obviously the professional collection. Does anyone have any questions just now about the sort of mechanics or the concept so far of open badges? If so, either just raise your hand or post a question in the chat room. I'll wait a couple of seconds, and then if not, I'll move on. There will be time for questions at the end. Okay, can't see. Oh, I can see that Scott is maybe just typing a question there into the chat room, so I'll just wait for that. Okay, so Scott's asking, how secure are the badges when issue users? Can they change any of the data within the badges? No, so earners can't change any of the data within a badge. That's the links, the metadata that's contained behind a badge are links back to the issuer's platform. So only the issuers or anyone who has access to those platforms can make those changes. For example, when we issue badges as the RSC Scotland, we issue badges using WordPress, and the criteria, the links back to the badge itself, the criteria for the badges or any evidence that are contained or linked to from the badge are all contained on our secure platform. So only people who had the necessary passwords to get into our platforms would be able to make any changes. So no, the earner cannot make any changes to the metadata behind the badge. Okay, Sarah's asking, information behind the badge, where is that held? So that is held in the issuer's platform. So that means that the criteria for the badge, for example, is a link back to a page on our WordPress issuing platform, and that's where that information is actually held. So we have complete control over that. In terms of, there are systems that have been developed where they're third-party systems, so the third party is holding that information. Work is sort of happening on that to make to authenticate essentially the original issuing party. So say we used the RSC Scotland, instead of using our own platforms to issue, we used a third party badge issuing platform. Then there are developments happening within the infrastructure that Mozilla are working on to make those make that sort of authentication back to us as the actual issuing party more clearly defined. So at the moment, it would be like a third party creating a certificate on behalf of someone else if you use a third party badge issuer. But if you are issuing yourself with your systems, then people can link back and check that it is your authentic platform and your authentic systems. And Sarah is also asking there, can they have expiry dates? Yep, you can build in expiry dates to badges as well, and that's being used in some cases, an example I'll come on to later on, for things that, like, say, health and safety certification or fire training certification, for example, where things have to perhaps be done on a yearly basis. You can build in expiry dates to badges as well. Okay, so I will move on with some examples now of how people are using open badges. There are some quotes here from different perspectives of using badges or engaging with them. One from a participant we've had in our online courses who commented that they felt it was good to see a badges scheme in operation and felt that it incentivized their participation during an online course. And we used badges for completion of the course, but we also had an additional influencer badge where peers could vote for someone within the course who had significantly contributed to their learning. So that was an additional badge that people could gain in the course. We also have a quote here from the Vice Principal of Borders College in Scotland, who have been using open badges since 2013, been issuing them, and they believe that they have huge potential in motivating learning, improving retention, and also helping their students to stand out from the crowd by being able to badge some of those additional skills that employers are looking for. Things like digital literacy, good communication skills, having a professional digital identity, things like that. So they're using badges to recognise some of those things that formal qualifications don't necessarily highlight. We also have a quote here from Tom Kyra, who's the chair of the Industry Advisory Board for Computing at the University of the West of Scotland. They are going to be piloting badges, and they have received approval from the Industry Advisory Board members to start using badges or to start piloting using badges to badge some of those attributes that employers are looking for. And at a recent event at UWS, we gathered information on the types of attributes employers are looking for, things like as well as being a problem solver, being a problem identifier, things like appropriate business etiquette, good communication skills, and so on. So again, some of those softer additional skills which aren't necessarily picked up through formal qualification routes, they feel that badges could help fill a gap there to recognise and surface some of those attributes. Just to give some examples of how people are using them or planning to use them, the Jisc RSC Scotland, as I mentioned, we are issuing badges. We also have founded and facilitate the Open Badges in Scottish Education group, which is just under 100 members, representing a very wide range of stakeholders who are interested in badges across Scotland. So we have educational institutions from primary school, secondary school, further and higher education, educational agencies like Education Scotland, the Scottish Qualifications Authority, who's our national awarding and accreditation body, the Scottish Government, employers, unions, standards agencies, student bodies are all very interested in how badges can potentially plug some gaps and help to recognise more about an individual than is currently being recognised through formal accreditation per se. So we have been using that group to support and raise awareness amongst the sector here in Scotland. And just to give some more information on what that group is doing, we're gaining a sort of an overview and performing a mapping function of open badge developments in Scotland. We're overseeing a number of subgroups, and the group provides a forum for discussion and for connections to be formed between different stakeholders. So, for example, we're seeing employers wanting to connect with educational institutions and so on, which is all a really useful and interesting discussion to be supporting. The subgroups that are supported through the OBSEG are a learner progress, staff development and technology and design groups. Celeste, who's also co-moderating this session today, is the leader of the staff development session, the staff development group. And the other groups are looking at a range of areas that they feel badges could touch upon, such as soft skills, such as library and learning resources, people making good use of those, using badges potentially within the context of MOOCs, employer engagement, accreditation and recognition of prior learning. So also looking at some of the technical side of things, so things like levelling from an assessment point of view, what frameworks people might use to demonstrate the level within a badge, what qualifications frameworks they might align to, badge pathways and processes and so on. So there's a range of different topics that the subgroups are beginning to discuss. In terms of what we issue badges for, we issue badges to recognise contribution to the learning of others, to accredit acquisition and application of knowledge through our courses and workshops. We also use badges to reward sharing of practice, so people who contribute to our forums and webinars. To help motivate the sector and people within the sector to engage with our services and to learn more about the use of technology in education, which is what Jisc supports. The SQA, Scottish Qualifications Authority, are also committed to investigating opportunities with badges. This quote comes from Joe Wilson, the head of new ventures at the SQA. And they're a core member of the Open Badges and Scottish Education Group, and they believe badges could really help support greater flexibility for learning and recognition of achievement. They are looking at them in the context of informal learning to formal certification, so trying to sort of bridge that gap and supporting people to gain some kind of recognition for informal learning, with the hope that might tempt them into formal learning scenarios also. Looking at badges in terms of recognising single competencies and outcomes, and sort of chunks of learning that are smaller than would normally be recognised by national credit rating systems. So, for example, in Scotland we have the Scottish Credit and Qualifications Framework, which recognises learning of 10 hours and above, but obviously the learning happens in smaller chunks than that as well, so they're looking at using badges in that context. Also looking at badges in terms of accrediting prior learning. So at the moment, to gain credit for an SQA qualification and to get onto one of their courses, people can prove prior learning, and at the moment that it happens through submitting a portfolio. but they're now beginning to look at using badges for those, and they're also considering looking at issuing badges for the SQA through the SQA Academy. So for teachers and external verifiers that engage with the SQA, issuing badges for some of the CPD and some of the learning that they go through with the SQA Academy. Borders College in Scotland has been using badges for a while, and they are using them to motivate learners and improve retention through stepped achievement. So they are aware that they have some students who perhaps haven't engaged well previously with formal education, and so they're using badges to just sort of break that journey. So for example, when students start on a one-year course, for example, they know that some students find it too long a period to have to wait before getting any kind of formalised recognition for what they're learning. So they're using badges to split that up. So as an example, if a student is doing a course, a media course, they might get a badge for learning how to develop and show evidence of a podcast, so they can gain some kind of recognition along the way. They're also using them for things like creating professional identities, and that fits with their development of digital literacies in students and being able to present themselves in a professional manner as they move beyond learning, their formal learning. They're also using them for staff CPD, and their HR department has actually got rid of paper certificates fully and have moved to just issuing digital badges now for staff CPD sessions. And they believe that that the badges will help to enhance employability because they are recognising some of these soft and additional skills and digital literacies in general. So just to recap there, so that they're using them to break up what can be a difficult learning journey, recognise smaller achievements, also to encourage returners and to enable that sort of student differentiation by giving a more holistic view of a student and their full range of attributes as well as skills. So just to before we move on to the design, some of the design principles or considerations, some of the things that we know that issuers believe open badges can help and enable are providing evidence of employability skills and attributes, help to showcase attributes alongside academic qualifications on professional profiles such as LinkedIn. This enables employers to search online to identify individuals with that right mix of skills as well as attributes for a specific job. By being able to link to evidence if anyone viewing a badge wants to check for themselves, verify for themselves what the badge has been issued for, they can link through to evidence if that has been provided. And there are opportunities through bringing different stakeholders together to create an influence relationship. So one of the things that's being developed currently with open badges or being looked at is the opportunity for agreements to be for an external organisation to endorse a badge. So this differs from endorsement that you might get on LinkedIn, for example, where anyone can endorse. This is pre-issuing. So for example, if a university has placement students working with a particular organisation, so say it's a media course and students are doing placements with the BBC, then they could potentially build a relationship with the BBC, and the BBC might endorse the qualification that the institution provides, but also vice versa. The institution could potentially endorse a badge that the BBC gives to their placement students. So there are opportunities there. In terms of getting started with badges, there are some design considerations and obviously there are a range of tools available. At Jisc we are currently developing a toolkit for supporting getting started, and the sort of three key areas that we're focused on are looking at badge system design, badge content design, and badge brand design. And we believe it's helpful to cycle through these while developing badges, so that when you are beginning to think about considering developing badges, that you think about them not just in isolation, but in terms of what is it you want to badge, what other badges might you begin to develop and issue, and what badge brand do you want to have? So how do you want the visual look of your badges to be, so that you have a recognizable brand and that people begin to trust? So if we break those down into three areas, the badge system design considerations include things like what do you want to badge and why, thinking about the flexibility of your badge system, so that if you are beginning to badge, perhaps beginning to cluster badge types together so that you begin to develop badge series, and thinking about those series in terms of perhaps we tend to use the term constellations, so that's groups of related badges, but also potentially badge pathways, so where you might move from one badge to another badge, and once you have built up a range of badges, then you might get a final badge. So as an example of that, we have a number of badges in our digital practitioner series, which previously has, as we would refer to that as being a constellation, or digital practitioner constellation, but we're also looking at developing pathways so that earners can gain badges for our 3 Learning Online courses, but they can also gain digital practitioner badges for workshops that develop digital practitioner skills. And once they have gained all 3 Learning Online course badges and a mixture, defined mixture of the workshop badges, then they will gain a digital practitioner badge. So we're looking at sort of ranges of related badges, but also pathways to higher level badges as well. In terms of badge content design consideration, things to consider are who is your badge for, and really the value behind the badge. Why would someone want to earn the badge? One of the things we're very clear about trying to avoid with the RSC Scotland is contributing to badge apathy. We don't want to be badging things that people aren't going to actually value. So so that's the starting point for us, is who is it for and why are they going to value earning this badge. Then we begin to look at what is it we're actually badging. So what are the skills, attributes or understanding that are represented by the badge? What behaviours do you want to encourage? So the behaviours, as mentioned previously, that we look to encourage are engagement with our services, our contribution, sharing practice, acquiring and applying learning. So those are the kinds of behaviours we're wanting to encourage through the badges that we issue. The criteria for a badge is very important, and for us we don't always link to evidence. In certain instances we will, but our main vehicle for demonstrating what someone has had to do to earn one of our badges is through the criteria. So we will contain within our criteria a list of the skills, attributes and understanding that someone has had to demonstrate to gain one of our badges, and we also provide some narrative about what someone has done to gain the badge. So in the case of a badge for our Learning Online courses, for example, we'll provide some narrative about the course, about the activities that they've had to engage in, and we also include the matrices, the course matrices that we use with our courses and that set out the satisfactory completion. So we have a mix of sort of the actual activities and those having been complete, but also the quality and the level which people have had to work to earn completion of the course. We do link to evidence in some of our badges, so that should be thought about what that would be. So for example, we issue badges for our case study contributors, winners and finalists. We every year at our annual conference we issue awards for the best case studies. that we develop with members from the Scottish further and higher education sector. And so we do provide links to the case study, which is hosted on our showcase for those. For those winners, not for the contributors. We just do that for the finalists and the winners. Other things to consider are what modes of assessment are appropriate. And things like, are you going to have someone else endorse your badge? What channels might people use to find out about your badge? What systems you're going to use, so issuing platforms, how are you going to create your badges? In terms of people discovering your badge, are you going to use specific tags or keywords in your badges? What sustainability requirements are there in terms of resources that your institution needs to maintain and continue the development of a badge system? So those need to be considered when you are designing your badge, and we are currently, as mentioned, working on a design toolkit, and this is a draft. This is a draft version of what we're working on currently, a design sheet to help people think through those different elements for badge content design, and this has been developed based on a Digital Me design sheet that has been developed by Digital Me. So we're just slightly reformatting this in terms of being used by further and higher education. And so finally, the last part of the cycle is to consider your badge brand design. I developed the original badges and the badge look and feel for the Jisc RSC Scotland badges, and it took a bit of thinking about what shape are we going to use, what are our badges going to look like, what colour schemes will we use. We wanted to obviously ensure that any badge that we issue has a specific look and feel about it, so that if someone looks at it on a web page, they can quickly ascertain that this is a badge from the Jisc RSC Scotland. But we also wanted to consider what consistent visual identifiers we would use. So for example, we use a green flash to show that a badge has been provided to, or has been awarded to, anyone that has contributed significantly to the learning of others. So we give those badges the title of influencer. So we have influencer badges in all our Learning Online courses. So whenever we feel that that someone has significantly contributed to or mentored the learning of others, we will then use a sort of green flash to identify that. For any badges that are issued to tutors on our courses, then we will use a gold flash for that, and we also include stripes in that. So these are purely the visual identifiers. All of this information is also obviously contained in the metadata behind the badge itself. So by clicking on the badge, you will find out all of this information. So these are just the quick visual identifiers that people can use to perhaps gain a bit more of a quick understanding of what's contained behind that badge. Obviously, other things to think about are who will design your badge brand design, and what systems or tools you might use to design your badge. I've used Adobe Illustrator for the badges that we've developed, but there are also online platforms as well that you can use to create use basic badge design shapes and build up badges online. So here are a list of some of the tools that you might want to look at in terms of those. The Jisc Open Badges design sheet I just showed a minute ago is due for release sometime in March 2014, and we will be using that at the Jisc DigiFest conference. Mozilla are also developing a badge kit which will bring together a whole range of tools and systems and APIs that they recognize as effective tools and systems to use for badge creation and issuing, and that is due, I believe, sometime around March or April this year. Digital Me have a range of resources relating to badge creation. There are a wide range of issuing platforms, and these include things like WordPress, Moodle, Blackboard, but there are other ones out there. And there are also design platforms, a couple to mention there is BadgeMaker, developed by a Scottish firm, and openbadge.me, developed by the My Knowledge Map company. And so they provide online interfaces that you can drag various shapes and designs to start building up a badge look and feel, so a badge brand for yourselves. Okay, so just to finish off, some final links here, which you might want to use to find out a bit more about Open Badges. There are links to our pilot of Open Badges, also to the Mozilla Open Badges site, which is openbadges.org. You'll find a range of information there. There's information on the Open Badges and Scottish Education group. We have some case studies on Open Badges on our showcase site, and also I regularly blog about Open Badges, so you can find some posts there. Okay, so I'll just leave that up for reference, and there's time now. We have about 10 minutes left for any questions, any further questions you might have. And thanks to Celeste for putting up some links there. Okay, yep, Sarah, go ahead. Okay, so this is quite a long question here. I'll just pull this out so I can read it a bit better. Okay, so are employers aware of the value that badges hold? Gaining the badge is an incentive, but for them to have real value to the learner, they need to be of use to employers. Are employers aware and using badges to recognise skills and competences of learners, or is it too early to tell yet? So yeah, employers are using badges. Things like Microsoft, for example, are using badges. NASA are using badges. Disney, the Obama administration are using badges. Various higher and further education institutions are also beginning to look at badges, and some are issuing them both to staff and to students. In terms of employers represented on the Industry Advisory Board for Computing that I mentioned earlier, these are made up of employers from the likes of Apple, Cisco, Microsoft, as well as local employers to the University of the West of Scotland. And at an event we held early in January where we asked employers what they felt about badges and whether they could be used to recognise employability skills and whether they would value them. The answer was yes. They had a lot of questions, and I have actually written quite a long blog post about their response to the whole idea. So it was quite an intense workshop which took place over the period, this space of a morning, and they were introduced to the concept of badges for the first time. Many of them hadn't come across the idea previously, and we then also within that looked at the attributes that they are looking for, particularly within students, and we then used design sheets to help them consider whether Open Badges could be used to evidence those attributes, and yeah, they are certainly interested. The issue of value is something that we believe will be built up over time, and it's probably likely that badges from recognised and trusted institutions will be valued more initially, but that there are opportunities for badge brands to develop and for trust networks to increase as more and more badges are used. You've got a follow-on question there. Do colleges need to be educating employers? We have links for it to gain pace and recognition. Yeah, I think there's certainly a place for education, and that's absolutely one of the things where the aims of the Open Badges and Scottish Education group, by bringing together a range of stakeholders that can be that the Open Badges will have an impact on in some way, means that everyone can talk through, you know, these anxieties people have about badges, and talk through solutions, talk through how they'll develop what it is that you know, how the whole ecosystem of badges will begin to develop, and what might be needed there for people to begin to gain a better awareness of them, and to build up the recognition of badges they trust. Certainly within Jisc, we are very much trying to also promote the idea of that value, so that badges aren't just issued for anything, and being careful about what you are issuing badges for, so that when people are receiving or looking at badges from a particular issuer, that they have a sort of benchmark value placed upon those badges because they've trusted other badges they've seen from that issuer. Okay, Jim's asking a question. You reference badge apathy. In the US, we reference badge inflation, where badges are issued for too many mundane accomplishments, which can lead to badge apathy. As more issuers come online, does the danger of inflation and apathy increase? How to regulate the system? So, yeah, again, I think this is going to be something that develops over time. I think probably, that curve, I can't remember the name of it, but there's a curve of when any new development or technology comes in, there are the people, the immediate enthusiasts who get on board with it, then and there's a spike of interest, and then there's the sort of curve, the downwards curve of deflation as people begin to realize, well, this might not be doing all these amazing, it might not be the solution to everything and anything, and then it sort of balances out. It reaches the sort of plateau where people begin to understand where badges come in useful, what badges, how badges are going to be of value to them, and people begin to integrate this new way of thinking and working into their everyday approaches. So I do think that that's something that will happen over time, and possibly through things like endorsements. So where if an educational institution, for example, endorses a badge that has been developed by, say, a voluntary organisation that wants to recognise the work of their volunteers and the attributes that people are gaining through volunteering, perhaps having an educational institution endorse that will place an immediate sense of trust in that badge, because people are already trusting of that formal educational institution. And the reasons why we trust formal education institutions is because we're aware of the external verification procedures they have to go through, the quality assurance procedures they have to go through to maintain their status and to retain recognition as a trusted educational institution. So I think that's something that will develop over time, and the earner having control of their badges as well, and deciding where and what badges they will display is part and parcel of that. If you're a student at the start of your career, it's quite likely you'll try and use as many badges as possible to show as much as possible about yourself, but perhaps as your career goes on, you'll be more selective of the higher level badges that you can use to say something about yourself. So I think also that will play into the ecosystem where earners making choices and decisions about what badges they display and when will help to build up trust and value in badges overall. Okay, so are there any other questions? We've got just a couple of minutes left, so okay, great. Well, thanks everyone. It's been great to have you with us today. So good luck if you're about to start using badges, or if you are already issuing and doing things with them. It'd be great to hear what you're doing with those. So all the best with that. And do we get a badge for attending? No, we don't actually. We do give a badge if it wasn't myself working for the RSC, we do give a badge for people who deliver webinars, but we don't give one for attending, purely because we can't really ascertain whether you've actually learned anything unless we followed that up with some kind of assessment. So so we don't. But it's a good question, because some people will actually do badges for attendance, and there is also benefit in that to a certain extent for people showing interest in a subject area, for example. It all comes back to the criteria. Great. Okay. Well, thanks for now, and yeah, we'll wrap up there.